Okay. Before we start the video, we have to give credit to basically the founder of this genre, Chandler Ainsley. Because am I stealing it? Yes. But am I also giving credit? Also yes. And what I've learned from college is it's not stealing when you cite the source. So, shout out to Chandler Ainsley. I just wanted to do the same concept for one of my booktube friends, Rhiannon.
Yep, that's me.
Hello, beautiful bookish people. My name is Hannah, and today I've read 5 of my booktube besties' favorite books. So if you don't know, Rhiannon has kind of been there for me since practically day one. They were my first booktube friend, the first booktuber I hung out with, and they've basically been there through thick and thin, and I love them. So today, I don't know, I just wanted to sit down and see what Rhiannon's favorite book says about them. You know what I mean? It's not that deep. But if you aren't familiar with Rhiannon, I'm going to link them down in the description as well because they're great and you should check them out. But I think we should talk about the books, right? Okay, cool. So the first book that comes to mind when I think of Rhiannon is obviously The Devouring Gray. The Devouring Gray is about these 4 kids set in a small town called Four Paths. And in this town, there is a beast, or a monster, if you will. Cue Gabby Hanna's monster meme. What is the monster that's been here all along? Now enter the story of our 4 kids as they're discovering their powers, tackling their inner demons, and maybe figuring out who they love.
Wow.
Of course, this is YA if you don't know. Now, I do want to say I don't think you should go into this story thinking it's going to be a dark, creepy, spooky small town setting because I think the vibe happens, but only at the very end. I think it's a very binge-worthy book. In fact, I think it's best suited if you read it possibly all in one sitting because you're just unraveling the drama constantly with this book. But I have to agree with Rhiannon. I think the most interesting character by far in this book is Isaac. In fact, I wish the perspective of him was much grander and maybe even he narrated the story, because imagine if this story was narrated by the social outcast who's also trying to reconcile his own personal feelings. Like, just imagine the angst. At the end of the day, my advice is to pick this book up for the character, not for the setting. But the setting will hit you. You know when they talk about settings being their own character, like they're talking about this book, but not until the very end. So, I gave this book 4 stars just because it's just a fun ride. And while it might be kind of typical, I think it does a good job with what it has. So, moving on. Okay, so the next book is Gideon The Ninth, which has such polarizing reviews. And I mean, I get it. Some I agree with and some I don't. Gideon is just very hard to explain, I think. From the beginning, you're given this character of Gideon as she's trying to escape the 9th house. No, not that one. Think of like a sci-fi camp. Why is she trying to escape, you might ask? Well, that is not explained till 200 pages later, so just sit down and buckle up. Gideon gets captured by this chick named Harrowheart, who then explains to her, hey, I'll get you what you want, your freedom, if you are my bodyguard in such sci-fi competition. A sci-fi competition between planets. Now, Gideon is so polarizing, and I think I fall in the middle because I totally understand some of the criticism, but I do have some like actual responses to others, because I think the major complaint I've seen is that the world building doesn't make sense, and I'm gonna let you in on a little bit of a secret. World building usually doesn't make sense to me anyway, so I was fine with it. You just kind of gotta roll with the punches with Gideon. And a lot of people thought there were way too many plot holes in Gideon, and I would like to remind some that this is a series and this book is purely set up. You just gotta wait for it. You gotta Aaron Burr it.
Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it.
Yeah, because you know that enemies to lovers pitch that you always hear about Gideon? You gotta wait for it. Wait. And I really like Gideon, but I love Harrowheart. Like, Gideon has a really cool backstory, but Harold Hark's is so much more compelling to me. But like Devouring Gray, I think it's just a fun ride. It's lesbian space necromancy, and it's beautiful in that sense. I think I give Gideon, again, 4 stars. But moving on. So the next book I picked up for Rhiannon was Circe, and I think Circe is like the perfect alignment for Rhiannon and I's taste. Like, it was amazing. It has, I think, what overlaps in Rhiannon and I's reading tastes. It has beautiful atmospheric writing, emotional angst from Circe, playing with magic, figuring out where you belong in the world, and taking life into your own hands. And it's beautiful. So if you don't know, Circe was originally one of Odysseus's trials in the Odyssey, where she famously turned men into pigs. Circe was originally seen as a trial for men to overcome, but in Madeline Miller's Circe, she's so much more than that, of course, because Madeline Miller is great. It tells about her backstory, her upbringing, and also explores different myths that you probably aren't familiar with to tell the story of Circe. Circe is such an interesting character and is developed so well. She cares so deeply about things with a sensitive heart, but also masks it behind a tough exterior because that's how she has to be in a Greek culture. And when I tell you, like, that is Rhiannon in a nutshell. Rhiannon is the type of person to care so deeply about something, is fiercely loyal, will give you the shirt off their back, but is not afraid to call you out on things. But at the end of the day, will be there for you. I know, I just saw a lot of Rhiannon in Circe, and it's cool because, like, that's the best part of reading your friend's favorite books, is because you see their taste and what they like about things, and it almost makes you understand them more. But getting back to Circe, Circe is purely a character study, but in the best possible way. It talks about finding your own narrative, and it also brings up the discussion of what it's like to be one chapter in someone else's story. Oh, that part hits. It's so good. It's a masterpiece, and it makes me think of that Little Women meme that just goes, women. I don't know, I really appreciated that. I gave Circe 5 stars and would highly recommend it. Okay, so the next book that I want to talk about is Nevernight, and if Circe was the perfect alignment for Rhiannon and I's reading taste, I think Nevernight is where we diverge. When talking about characters, world building, in a Greco-Roman atmosphere, this book is great. Like, just thinking about the setup and Mia witnessing her father's death, like, gives me chills. But fun fact about me is I show up for the writing style and the characters. And when I had a problem with both of those, it's kind of hard for me to swallow. A lot of people compare this book to Gideon, and I get that because our main protagonist is sarcastic, good with the knife, and queer, but that's about it. Because they're completely different plots. Personally, I enjoy Mia more than I do Gideon, purely on the fact that she's one of the only, like, kick-butt dark archetypes 16-year-olds that I believe. Like, there's a scene where Mia's, like, smoking cigarettes with Trick, and she's like, yeah, I'm jaded and good for nothing, and I'm gonna kill whoever killed my father. And you know what? I believe her. I don't want to talk too much about the writing style because I feel like a lot of people have talked about the writing style. I'll just quickly reenact it for you. I'm aching in my skin. That's the writing style. 2000s pop punk. And here's the thing, I don't even think J. Kristoff would be mad at that description. I like the idea of the incorporation of footnotes. Typically, they did distract me and they didn't add too much for me. I do like that it adds, like, a mystery element to it, like who's writing these footnotes, because it's not Mia. But will I read the other 2 books to figure it out? No. I read for Rhiannon was Bear and the Nightingale, which is almost, I would say, fantasy at its finest. At least what I like in fantasy. Because it's fantasy meets folklore. And I didn't know I needed that. It follows this girl who can see spirits, which is rare, as most people honor the spirits but can't actually see them. This all changes when the main protagonist's father marries someone new, and the stepmother wants everyone to stop worshiping the spirit. And the moral of the story, don't fix what's not broken, because havoc ensues and everything goes astray. Now that the plot's out of the way, I want to tell you, don't read it for the plot. Why do I sound like a gangster? Don't read it for the plot. Because I hate to break your heart, but it's not about the plot. It's much more about the folklore and the culture of this small town. So like most of this book, just enjoy the ride, just enjoy the atmosphere, enjoy the wait, and enjoy the anticipation for the drop, because like most of these books, everything happens at the end. But it's worth it. Hannah, I need you to do some sort of Fifth Harmony reference because I can't figure it out right now. Because it simply zooms in on a small Russian town, and you can feel the sense. You can smell the atmosphere when you read this, but you can't not focus on the detail. That being said, this book is basically just a prologue. But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful prologue, and sometimes the prologues are the best part of the stories. Am I right, Lainey Taylor? I think so. But yeah, that kind of concludes this video. I had a really fun time reading Rhiannon's favorite books, and honestly, I think I understand them maybe even just a little bit more, which is always cool. So, I don't know. Rhiannon, you'll have to tell me how I did, but thank you for watching. I'll see you next time, and keep reading and all that jazz. No, we're gonna cut that. There were way too many plotful... Okay. If I had to put my money on it... I don't even want to say. I mean, I feel like I've talked about never... okay. Because I hate to break your... What? Okay. Cool.